Hi, welcome to your video on multiplying and dividing fractions. By the end, you will be able to multiply and divide fractions and mixed numbers, and obviously that includes positives and negatives. Vocabulary you need to know is reciprocal. This shouldn't be new to you, but here's the definition. When two numbers or fractions are multiplied and the product is 1. Here are the examples. Make sure you copy these down in your notes. So if I have 2 and I want the reciprocal of 2, 2 is actually 2 over 1. And so then I can flip it. So the reciprocal will be 1 over 2. If I multiply these together and cross simplify, I end up with 1. And that's how I know that those are reciprocals. 1/8. The reciprocal would be 8 over 1. I cross simplify, I get a product of 1. So the reciprocal of 1/8 is 8. The reciprocal of -3/4 is 4 over -3. This is why this works, because if I take -3/4 and multiply it by 4 over -3, a negative times a negative is a positive, and then I can cross simplify all of these and get an answer of 1. So -4/3, 8, and 1/2 are reciprocal. How does multiplying fractions work? If I have 2/3 times 1/4, what that means is I have 2/3 of a box. So I'm going to split this into thirds going one direction, and then I'm going to color it in, those 2 out of the 3. Then for the 1/4, I'm going to go the opposite direction with my lines and divide it into 4 sections. Then I want 1/4 of it, so I'm going to color in this section. What got colored in was these 2 boxes got colored with both. So my answer then is going to be 2 out of how many boxes there are. And if I count those up, I get 12. And then I can simplify that, which would be 1/6. How do I multiply fractions? There is a shortcut involved, so make sure you do that because it's going to save you a lot of time. Here I have 3/7 times 4/5. The first thing I'm going to look for is to see if I can cross simplify. That's the key. That's going to save you a lot of time. That means you're going to look across, diagonal, to see if there's anything you can factor or divide out. 3 and 5 don't have any common factors, and neither do 4 and 7. So there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to multiply straight across now. 3 times 4 is 12 over 7 times 5 is 35. 12/35 is my answer. Next one. Again, look to see if you can cross simplify. Are there common factors between -5 and 3? No. Are there common factors between 6 and 2? Yes. The common factor is 2. So I can take 6 and divide 2. That will give me an answer of 3. I can take 2 and divide 2, and that will give me an answer of 1. So essentially, my new fraction is going to be -5/3 times 1 over 3. And that's going to make your math a lot easier, because now I can just multiply across. -5 times 1 is -5. 3 times 3 is 9. I don't even have to worry about simplifying because I already did that. Last one. Again, look to see if you can cross simplify. Are there common factors going diagonal? In this case, no. So I'm just going to multiply straight across. 2 times 1 is 2. 5 times 3 is 15. I'm done. Okay, this is your turn. Go ahead and copy these problems down and answer them on your paper. Obviously, there's no calculator getting used, but make sure you cross simplify before you multiply across. All right, here are your answers. Make sure you're starring them if you get them right, circling them if you get them wrong. How does dividing fractions work? So here we need to, we have 2 circles, so that's our 2. And then we're going to divide them in half. Okay? And obviously, you just cut them in half here, and then you count how many pieces you have now. That would be 4. So actually, when you divide fractions, you're going to end up with a bigger number than what you started with, because you're cutting things into pieces and then counting how many pieces you have. How do I divide fractions? So 3 examples for you. 2/9 divided by 2/5. So what you're going to do, there's one step before you solve this, and that's called keep, switch, flip. So you're going to keep the first fraction and make sure you actually rewrite this out. Don't try and do shortcuts here because it's only going to cause you to mess up. 2/9, you switch the division sign to a multiplication sign, and you flip. In other words, you're using the reciprocal, so 5/2. That becomes your new one. Then you look to see if you can cross simplify, divide out something. In this case, I can divide out 2 from the 2's. So now my new fraction then, this becomes 1 and this is 1, so 1/9 times 5 1s. And that's going to make very easy math. Your answer is 5/9. So a lot more rewriting on dividing, but it's only going to help you be successful. -1/3 divided by -1/2. You're going to keep the first fraction, -1/3, change that to a multiplication sign, and then flip to the reciprocal. It'll be 2/-1. Look to see if you can cross simplify anywhere. In this case, you can't. -1 times 2 is -2. 3 times -1 is -3. Now what you should know though is a negative times a negative is a positive. So I'm going to change my final answer here to 2/3. Last example, -1/4 divided by 1/2. Again, keep the first one, change to multiplication, and then reciprocal of that second one. And then look to see if you can cross simplify. Here I can divide out a 2 from these two. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So essentially my new problem becomes 1/2 times 1/1, which makes for very easy math. Final answer is 1/2. Your turn. 2 questions here. Make sure you keep, change, flip, and then try and cross simplify where possible. Here are your answers with work also, so hopefully that will help you find your mistake if you have one. Star it if you got it right, circle it if you got it wrong. All right, how do I multiply and divide mixed numbers? Very quickly here, because it's not really too new. So when you're multiplying with a mixed number, you're going to want to turn it to an improper fraction. That's early anytime you see a mixed number. So 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 more would be 17, and then you want to carry that negative sign over also. So -17/5 times 1/2. Look to see if you can cross simplify, which we can't. So my final answer is going to be -17/10, which we can turn into -1 7/10. And last one here. Again, change it to an improper fraction. Ignore that negative sign temporarily. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so 3/2. Now I put that negative sign back in. Then we're going to divide by -1/3. Now I keep, change, flip, so -3/2 stays, multiply, and reciprocal. Now I look to see if I can cross simplify, which I can't. So my answer is going to be -9/2. You should know a negative divided by a negative or times a negative is a positive. So my final answer is going to be 9/2 positive, which I can turn to a mixed number, which would be 4.5. That is the end of your video. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.